Hi there. Vocal processing part 2. Hi and welcome back, which is going to make a lot of sense, especially when you get to the end bit. Hi, welcome to Vocal Processing Part 2. I'm going to process a vocal today, just the dynamics of it, and at the end it's going to make a lot of sense. I've got a track here, it's got loads of great stuff in it.
That I was probably gonna lose it. So push the button, I'm begging you please. Don't push the button, you find me walking away like it ain't nothing. So push the button please, don't push the button baby.
Now, there's lots of vocals in this, but I'm just going to concentrate on a lead vocal today, so I've bounced out the lead with no effects on it. If you're on Cubase, by the way, and you highlight a part and press P, the locators jump around it. That's really handy if you didn't know.
Don't push the button please, don't push the button baby. You find yourself lonely without my loving.
Now, the first thing I want you to notice is that in Cubase and Logic and some other programs, you get this nice little display of the frequency output.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please.
And when I point out here that around this area, there's a bit too much.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please. Don't push the button, you'll find me walking away like it ain't nothing.
She may have recorded it slightly close to the mic. And then there's this sort of ramp which goes down as the frequencies go up. Now, to make things easy, I told you in the first vocal tutorial that basically there's two parts to a vocal. There's the sound part and the S's. It's really important when you go to process things. I do tend to add a little bit of compression before I do what I'm going to do next. So let's just have a look at this. Let's make it a rule of starting with the thresholds sort of off and setting the ratio at say 4 or 5 to 1.
Don't push the button.
Virtually no attack time because I don't want something to come through too loud and then get hit by the compression. I want to hit it straight away. The release time, don't really know. I'm going to leave it at 60, 59.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please.
So what I want to catch is those massive bits, the button which comes through. So I'm just going to bring this threshold down. I gave you a rule in one of the shorts, which is that deaf people need 6 dB of difference above the background noise to be able to hear. People with good hearing only need 3 dB, so that's a really good measure. 3 dB is a smaller change, which is useful but not too noticeable. 6 dB is kind of massive. So I'm going to go for about probably 3 to 6 dB of reduction.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please. Don't push the button, you'll find me walking away like it ain't nothing.
Now no one cares about that amount of, like, you can't really hear it. She sung it loud, it's reduced. She could have sung it less loud on that note, everything's okay. This isn't the important part of this tutorial. What I do next is, and I'm going to do this in a way that you could do it on anything, because I'm just going to say use a multiband compressor. I'm not going to say use something really clever. Sooth 2, by the way, is a massive multiband compressor. But don't use that. There's reasons for this. Okay, so I'm going to make up a few rules, and we're going to do them by looking at this, okay?
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please. Don't push the button, you'll find me walking away like it ain't nothing.
I'm waving my mouse around just to show you that nothing's really happening below 200 Hz. So to get the crossover a little bit clear of that, it's actually at 150 already. Let's leave the bottom part here at 150. So this is really an inactive part of the vocal processing, this bottom band. We're going to then set the middle band at 1 to 2K, but let's watch the vocal again.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please. Don't push the button, you'll find me walking away like it ain't nothing. Don't push the button please. Don't.
1K seems like a good place to split it. It shouldn't matter too much, 1 to 2K. So I'm just going to leave that there. Now the next bit, I'm going to say that 5 or 6K is a good place to have the top end. Now the top end, in this case, is doing the de-essing, but I want that to be as one block, not as a minimum thing to catch the S's, because I want the vocal to make sense. What I mean by make sense is that when you multiband something or sooth to it, the more detachment you get between parts, the less together it sounds. So although we are chopping up this vocal into 3 parts, you don't want the top end to be massively mashed up. Otherwise things do begin to sound weird, but you only notice that after a while. Okay, let's take the release times down in varying degrees. So I'm going to leave this at like 70, maybe this will be 50. And this one, crucially, should be as short as possible. And again, I don't want anything coming through and going click and then getting caught by the compression. I want to catch things straight away. So let's play this vocal again. I'm going to turn all the ratios off. And I can pretty much ignore this bottom thing here. We'll wave it around in a minute.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what...
Now if you watch this little left hand, the lower mid, so now we've got low mid, high mid, top end. If you look at the low mid, this jumps up quite a lot in the low mid, so we're only going to think about the low mid. Let's solo it.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none. Don't push the button please, don't push the button baby.
I have to use a different sound card driver when I'm doing the videos, so unfortunately this is going to occasionally pop and splutter.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none. Don't push the button please, don't push the button baby. You find yourself lonely with how I'm loving.
So I've taken another 6 dB just off this section. Let's go and do the same to the high mid. All of this will make lots of sense in a moment as to why I'm splitting it up into bits or why this is so useful.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none.
So you can see it jumping past where I've put the mouse quite nicely. Let's stick this ratio up and have a go at it.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none. Don't push the button please, don't push the button baby. You find yourself lonely with how I'm loving. Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me.
I'm also watching the channel output to see what that does. Seems to be controlling it quite well. Let's go to the top end. Top end's interesting because you can get a lot of air. This is a sort of air thing, but I want it as a block. Now there's another really important thing about using multiband compression. If you use dynamic EQ, you end up with ranges, and when the different notes are sort of sung, they end up in different parts of the frequency spectrum. So sometimes they're right in the center of it, and sometimes they're more at the edge. So I prefer to use a multiband compressor rather than sort of dynamic EQ and stuff like that. And this makes your decision making really simple in a minute, which is very important. Now the top end is doing the de-essing. There is some sort of compensation going on in Cubase when I was moving things about. So you may have heard that, especially on the low or high mid one. I heard that quite a lot. Anyway, I've been through all 3. Let's hear it back.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none.
Now you can turn the inserts off, I think, on Cubase with one button here. So here's the difference. Here's with it off.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push.
Oh, and watch the, in particular, watch this main output. And just bear in mind that in dance music, everything's going to be quite solid. So the kick's coming through, the same volume every time. The bass is probably very well controlled. The snare comes out at a level and then drops off. Everything's very controlled. So if you're trying to mix something, you want it in comparison to that. You don't want it coming and going by even a few dB. You actually want it quite nailed.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none. Don't push the button please, don't push the button baby.
So we're going somewhere between, I suppose, 12 and 5 dB, which is quite a lot. And now with everything on again.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me what can't wait, I can't none. Don't push the button please, don't push the button baby. You find yourself lonely with how I'm loving.
There's one thing happening, which is just around here, there seems to be a sort of resonant note. So against my will, I'm just going to reduce that here a few dB. I say against my will, I wanted to keep it all to the multiband compressor today.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me.
And watch the rest of the output, it's actually pretty solid.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you'll find me walking away like it ain't nothing. Don't push the button, please.
And as you watch these things more and more, you see that there's a resonant note, and then it tails off through each section because you've got the actual note, then you've got the harmonics of that, and then you've got the top end as a separate thing. Now, the great thing is when you mix this in with a track, now if we play this back with the track, it makes your decision making very easy because all we have to do is think, it sounds a bit low MIDI, or it sounds a bit high MIDI, or is there enough brightness? And then we can just move these bands up and down to make it mix well with the track, rather than spending a lot of time messing about with EQ. You've divided it into 3 sections. You can ignore this bottom bit, probably won't make a difference too much. So we can now listen back with the music and push these little blocks around, which is much, much, much easier than trying to do the EQ, which can then interfere with certain notes going up and down, and you're trying to EQ a certain area. All gets very confusing. This has everything in one place. If the low mid pokes through too much, you're going to compress it more. If the high mid is too coming and going, we compress that more. If there's not enough top end, you can turn the top end up. If the S's spike through, then you compress those more. So that's the process you go through mixing with this technique. So this isn't bright enough, I'm just turning the top end up. It got a bit glitchy here, so I'm going to start again.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you find me walking away like it ain't nothing. Don't push the button, please, don't push the button, baby. You find yourself lonely without my loving. Don't push the button,
and if I felt that was a bit too low MIDI, I can take this band down a bit or compress it more to get the same result.
Don't push the button,
sorry, to get a similar result.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you find me walking away like it ain't nothing.
And you can see if something's wrong, you can soon get it under control. Let's have it wrong and then correct it again.
Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you find me walking away like it ain't nothing. Don't push the button, please, don't push the button, baby. You find yourself lonely without my loving. Don't push the button, I'm begging you please, don't push the button, you find me walking away like it ain't nothing. Don't push the button, please, don't push the button, baby, 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 don't push the button.
So you can see how easy it is to get things under control. I've done this for like 15 years in this way, and I recently watched some tutorials on how to do vocals, and when I mixed somebody's vocals using those methods, whether it's my ineptness at following those tutorials or whatever, the people I was mixing down for said, something's changed, can you go back to mixing vocals how you used to? Generally, I don't have to stick anything in after that to control things. You could do something like saturation, I suppose, to control the peaks, driving it into a saturation just to take the top bits off. But that's all I do. I will do another tutorial of how I link everything together. So in this track there are loads of other bits, and I can show you how I go through the process of organising them and putting them in groups and stuff, but I think that's for another day. Okay. Subscribe!